Well, you know, that's what you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said to Ellie, call hospital and find out. I also told her to find out, you know, how do they, what's their Well, I think we'll give it one. So if somebody's logging on, I don't want to start.
Anyway,
No attendees.
but I told Victor was gonna come tonight, and I told him not to talk about the report.
The housing one?
Yeah. So I thought, if that's enough, that's enough. We have a lot on.
If the board wants more thorough report with the presentation, then he can
Pardon
come.
me?
If the board wants a more thorough report with somebody presenting, then we could put that on the next agenda.
He didn't want to miss pickleball.
Oh, yeah, the voucher's there.
He works hard, but he works hard.
Well, I just thought it'd be good. Friday.
One thing you can-
Yeah, so you can do that on Friday. All right, I guess we'll call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is any public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, but not action. So you guys are the public. Okay, and either of you, there is a copy of an agenda there if anybody wants, right there on the table. And if you want, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so, next, is reports from the town administrator. And we have committee reports, committee department reports. So Vika, do you have anything you want to report?
Yep, so, good evening, everybody. There are a few things under the TA report that I'll go over. There are also a couple other reports that were provided by other departments. If you have questions, I'm hopefully able to answer them. So first thing, ongoing, we're still in need of 2 planning board members and 1 board of adjustment appeals. They need to be registered voters of Schwig. If anybody is interested or knows somebody, please let us know, so those boards can get some assistance. Audit, the fiscal year 24 audit has finally been signed off on, and we are waiting to receive final draft and several paper copies from the auditor. So when those do arrive, we'll shoot you an email and let you know they're in the office, and you can come have a paper copy all to yourself. Mark Roy has been provided access into the town's Trio account, so he can go in and view things without needing to reach out to us and ask to generate reports. He's also been granted access to the town bank account, so he can go in and view. He can't do anything, but just view the statements, so then he can compile the information that he needs. Per his suggestion, we are going through the process to open up a separate bank account where we'll transfer all the FEMA money into, and then we will pay or use those expenditures when the time comes from the separate account. In the meantime, he has been in contact with the auditors, and he has been able to receive some of the information that he was looking for to start assessing and ultimately letting us know kind of how much work is ahead of us, and then that will give us a better idea of how much more funding we might need to be able to get through this year, having it been an item that was not budgeted in the original budget process. Any questions so far? This I kind of hesitated putting in, but I think it's good for the board to know. The sheriff is off island, so the contract runs through Labor Day, and so any coverage that we receive from here on out would be through dispatch, and they would have to send somebody over, so. Next is the Cousins Island Bridge improvements. Per your suggestion, I did email them and let them know of what the town concerns and comments were, and then in the report here, I put in the brief statement of what their response was. Emerald Ash, so we did have somebody come out to the island at the beginning of September, and the town did drive them around to give them a better perspective of what the municipal land is, and I drove them down to Sunset and a couple other areas that the town owns where there's some woods no major concerns about large groups of ash on town property. Majority of it is on private property, majority of it is right within this area in clusters. And so we did get a pretty decent direction of what the recommendation is on a municipal level, and that's over the next year to kind of take an inventory and assessment of where the trees are within the town right of way, and then come up with a plan whether they should be taken down or whether they could be treated. There were areas where he suggested of just removing the trees, other areas where he suggested treatment options would be helpful. And so that is going to be kind of an ongoing side project that we have between now and the beginning of the budget process. So then at the start of the budget process, we have a better idea of how much money to allocate into the next budget cycle to be able to start doing some tree removal and some treatment. So that's kind of the plan on the municipal level. Does anybody have any questions about that before I go into the private property part? David?
I was just wondering if there's any sense of what percentage of trees might be vulnerable and which trees might be saved?
So that's why we're gonna do an inventory, because we don't know that.
We don't know.
So we drove him through just kind of the town, and he was able to point out a few, but he wasn't able to do that off of a 30-minute drive around the island, and so his recommendation was to do a more thorough inventory and have somebody who can recognize them, and then we can kind of look on the lower end to see whether it's gotten to that point where there's, so the short answer is no, that's what we need to do over the next few months.
So the inventory, is that something the town does with town staff, or do you have to hire a forester to do it? What's
So his recommendation was either or. He said that based on what he saw within the municipal right of way, there isn't a lot. And so it is kind of a side project that we could put on staff. And so it was something that I was going to incorporate our new Island Institute fellow in to try to have that be something that she helps out with a lot, but obviously not have it take over the work that she is expected to be doing.
It was my impression from the presentation,
Excuse me.
any untreated tree will die. So we will lose all ash trees that are not treated. That was my.
Correct. And so the other part of this is there's a tree that is abutting Will and Maggie Vaughn's house that is on town property. I did this, bring this in front of you a couple of meetings back, just to let you know that it was something that was gonna be coming forward. At that point, I was under the impression that the only option was to remove it. These two gentlemen did go there, I did take them there. They felt pretty confident in their expertise that that's a tree that could be treated. Excuse me. And so at this point, in the meantime, I did receive an email from the residents concerned. And I'm bringing it to you. Excuse me. Still not easy to talk about. So at this point, I need some direction from the board as far as how you want me to take it. I don't have any paper quotes from, as far as how much it would cost, but I was told that treating it is probably going to be more cost-effective way, so I need some direction from this board as far as which direction you would like me to take it, or how much more.
I personally, I see no downside to trying the treatment because it's less expensive, and if it doesn't work, we can potentially then pay again. But
I would want to know the cost of the treatment and compare that with 2 quotes for taking it down, so that we can have a good sense of what we're comparing, because one of the questions about treatment is how long does it last, what about being retreated? So it was, I believe it was my impression that one treatment is not enough.
Treatment would have to take place every 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so So taking a look at that.
That makes sense. But I think you're looking for whether you should pursue, so you're saying you want to see a comparison of treatment and removal.
Quotes for removal.
My question is, what do the Vaughns think about this? Do they think they'd like to try to save it, or would they like to have it gone? Or do they?
So the residents would like the town to remove the tree off of the town property and pay for that to take place. That would be their preference, but the professionals told me that they were very confident that that wasn't necessary, and the treatment option would be significantly cheaper, even if it is repeated over several years. So with having those two very drastic perspectives, which is why I'm coming to you, asking what your consensus is, so then I either move one way or another, or kind of provide more on both ends.
So you mentioned the collective purchasing agreement that may be coming forth from that help.
So that was just one of the things that he suggested, that if, so the direction was on a municipal level that we do, but then on a residential level, there are a lot of areas that residents are gonna have to be responsible, like the Damon's property over here, he walked people over and showed an example. A lot of those trees are gonna have to be removed. That's a cost directly to a resident. And so there is an opportunity to research and do more of what we just did for the heat pumps. But once again, we're not gonna take that initiative and invest that time without the board being in agreement that that's something that you would like to do. So.
Yeah, I would agree that we should just get the bids and anything, because whatever decision we make, we need to talk to the property owners. And if the more information we have, I think, before we have that conversation, whatever it winds up being, I think we should have that information.
I think though that he is differentiating the municipal responsibility from.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about our tree, our
Yeah.
tree.
Right.
Okay. Yep, I can do that. I can look in to see what the treatment costs would be, and then what the costs would be for removal, which I've gotten vague answers. I've asked for something to be put on paper, but that has been more difficult to get than I thought it would.
I mean, there's always, the ideal possibility too, like if we would prefer to keep it up or not spend the money, take it down, and the owners feel really strongly about it. I mean, a lot of times when you have neighbors and they have a tree that potentially could affect both, sometimes they split some costs, so I'm not saying they will, I'm just saying that's a possibility, but.
So right now, I think that it's gonna be at least a $4,000 cost for that tree removal, just with knowing what the rate is out here per day, and having had some trees removed myself, knowing what we removed versus what that's probably at least a 2 to 3 day project, which the average is running at $2,000 a day. So you're looking at $4,000 to $6,000 easily. That's not something that's within the budget, and so it would have to come out of select board contingency. With this being very early in the season, that is a good chunk of cash, which is why I did not feel comfortable making a recommendation one way or another with it not being a budgeted item. So I wanted more direction before I invested more time to figure out, what would be the best solution.
There are currently 2 companies. How many companies are doing trees up here? Can we get multiple quotes?
I was looking to get 2 quotes from 2 different companies,
Okay,
so.
thanks.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, did we get some kind of anything official from the people who came out and looked at that tree in terms of a report?
No, that wasn't, they offered to come out, but reports, no. But that's, if we were looking to do treatment, if we were looking to do that, then I think some of that information would be asked.
Yeah, I just think we had that due diligence for the sake of the owners who were concerned. We show that we did our research and we have, good information and we have a plan.
Yeah, and the owners did come to that meeting for the public, because when they were done helping the municipality, we opened it up to the public, and we had, I think, almost nearly 30 people show up on a Tuesday midday, and those owners did come, so they were able to communicate directly with the professionals as well, so. All right, so it sounds like you want more information.
I think
Okay.
financial information just to make sure,
Okay.
right? And, you know, did you receive any email summary back from, the individual who came out? Because, I mean, he probably would be willing to send an email saying, you know, here's what I saw on the municipal side, you know, the town tree that was.
I can ask for it,
might
I'm
be
sure,
good to
yep.
have that. I think that's kind of what you're asking for. Yeah. At least in the past, that's what they've done. So, yeah, and so, Vika, anything else on that? I know Donna
Nope.
has a question, I think. right?
Nope, I know what to do now, thank you.
Okay, and I guess I have to ask.
This is just a kind of a clarifying question. I know we have a ton of trees that are our responsibility, but we also have a bunch that are in the right of way of the road. And so that big one that's on the corner that he showed everybody, it's in the right of way of the road. And there are 2 or 3 along the road there. So what's the town's position if they're in the right of way of the road? And what about CMP? We have some other ones, for example, that go through, they have a right of way down through, you know, our yard. And so I don't know if CMP is going to be coming over here and looking at these trees and maybe doing something, because so for example, if that tree dies and falls down, it's gonna wipe everybody's power out. So do you have any CMP questions? And like I said, I just wanted the record to say that many of our trees are our responsibility, but some of them are not.
So that, the first step was having them to come out, and the direction that they provided to the municipality was go do a good inventory of what's within the town right away and what's not, and properly budget for that. And then in the meantime, see if there are things that are CMP responsibility or not. And that's kind of where, us kind of taking some time over the next several weeks or so, to figure out what they are, connecting with Lenny to determine whether they're aware of it. I'm sure they are, but that's kind of what the next step will be.
I was just gonna say, we had CMP come out and take care of trees that were actually on nowhere near town land, but were in line with the power lines.
So they are
They just have to be
responsible
aware.
for things within the power lines, whether they're on town land, whether they're on private land. So, but I don't know what their knowledge or responsibility is relative to that. It's kind of, the professionals gave us a sense of directions as far as how to handle and what to do next, and those are the next steps of what we'll be doing and figuring out who does that and whatnot.
Was there any talk of funding sources for private property owners for, you know, tree mitigation? Did they talk about that at all?
I don't remember. I ended up having to skip out for a little bit of it, but my recollection from when I was there that there isn't a whole lot available, because it is a very big problem throughout the state and other areas.
And coincidentally, we're gonna be doing our wildfire assessment starting this fall, and so, you know, obviously dead and dying trees are a concern, so I think we can make sure they also incorporate that issue with the emerald ash borer. And then this other, did we talk, I wasn't there, but they also talked about the beach problem.
What he did say on the drive is that this small little location has a lot of competing invasives that
Here.
bittersweet and all kinds of other stuff, and so it might be worthwhile figuring out on an island basis treatment options. And there was the I think by him, maybe the suggestion of, you know, some areas bring out animals and kind of let them disperse for certain things, so I think that's something maybe worth thinking in the future of
Okay.
it.
Any more questions on the Emerald Ash Borer topic? Okay.
Need a motion?
Alika, anything else
No.
in terms of your TA report?
Yeah, just two more things to add. I'm gonna go to the Maine Municipal Association Conference, in Bangor, so I will be gone the 8th and the 9th for that. And then the Select Board Retreat is coming up. It is this Friday. It is in Yarmouth, like it was last year. I did have a meeting with Christina today. I took the information that you put in the share drive about your suggestions, sent that over to her, and then we talked about how the agenda will be kind of staggered. And so as of right now, what it's looking at is there will be a brief introduction in terms of talking about what last year's goals were. I will share that information with you tomorrow, so you can refresh yourself, and then Earhart had not, was not participating at that point, so it will be new information to him. And then it'll go into looking at what the point of that meeting will be, which is really to not solve all the problems of Shebig, but come up with what the important goals are going to be for you as a board in the upcoming year. One suggestion that I had was that to maybe put some kind of a anticipated, projected outcome from those goals. So having a goal is one thing, but what do you want to see with that goal done at the end of the year? And then dwell more into a lot of the topics that that you had suggested, and then that information will be taken. She will facilitate the whole process, and then she will provide the board with a summary like it was done last year, and then that will be shared with the public, probably at the next meeting, maybe, I think, if the timing works out well, so. So that's everything for the TA report, and there are a couple of other reports in there if you have any questions. If not, then that's all I have.
Well, and I just wanted to give Eliza Jane an opportunity to just talk about the housing committee, because we asked for the prepare report, and so maybe you can just give people an update on where things are at.
I will. I want to thank you, Carol, and Victor Chilsnoy, who's a member of the committee, is going to come this evening, and I said I would speak on his behalf. We're up to 100 on the survey. I want to thank you to everyone in the town for going along with re-releasing it. I really am. Due to some circumstances, we've had to delay it, but the survey is looking good. With we just had 30 more people answer it today. Working with connecting with the Island Institute about doing some further research up and down the coast of Maine, and so that's progressing well. And we should have a good plan that we're ready to formulate after the September 30 community discussion about the results of the survey. And I'm really hoping that we have a good turnout on that day to react to what the results of the survey are, and to give some good direction about the next phase of what the community is asking for.
Great. Any questions for Eliza about the housing committee survey? On the board? No, on the public? Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to change subject a little bit. I went to the dump today, or the transfer station, as we call it, and got a tour of all the work that's been done there over the past few weeks from Jeff Westcott, and it's very impressive, and I think you should recognize Jeff's work on that.
Oh, in terms of department, I get you. Okay, I was wondering where that's coming from. Yes, I agree. You're lucky. All right, so I think we're done with the town reports. We're gonna move on to regular business. First item on the agenda under regular business is 2569, to introduce the Island Institute Fellow, Lorraine Marchetta, to the select board and to the town, and provide a brief overview of what our task will be. So there was a memo summary sort of in the packet on Loren's background, and I'm not sure actually who's supposed to be doing this. This is
Yeah, so there was some information in the packet. I'm not going to read it or go into detail to spare you from more coughing attacks in front of you. But I am gonna ask Loren to stand up and maybe briefly introduce herself to you guys and the public, and then if you have any questions about, maybe summarize who you are, where you came from, and what you're gonna be doing for us. And then if the board has questions, ask away. If the public has questions, and take it from there.
okay.
I just go up there?
Yeah, if you stand kind of on the edge of the table, just be 4 or 5 feet away from that so it catches your face.
Okay.
And speak up.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Loren Rochetta, as Carol said. This is my second week here. I moved from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I spent 9 years, and before that, I spent the rest of my early years of life in Cranston, Rhode Island. I graduated in May from the University of Delaware with a master's degree in marine policy. There, I was a graduate research assistant in the Center for Researching Wind, where I primarily did mixed methods research, so like surveys and interviews with coastal communities and fishermen and other folks regarding marine renewable energy development and how it locally impacts people. And before that, I spent a little over 10 years in the social work field. I was a therapist for 7 years, working with teenagers and young adults. And yeah, so I've had a pretty mixed background that informs a lot of my work. I really like working with people, really like hearing about what they think about and the places that are really important to them and how that can influence policy decisions. And so I'm really excited to work with Vika and the town. Should I talk about the projects a little bit? Yeah, okay, cool. So the first thing that I'm working on is a shoreline access inventory. And so what that looks like is going to each right-of-way and then documenting what that looks like, things that are confusing about it, whether that's signage, whether that's impacts from erosion from the storms, whether that's, is this private property, is this not private property, and really trying to understand how we can make sure that people can safely access the shore for generations to come. And so the culmination of that will likely be an interactive map where folks can go online or in person and see exactly on a map where to go. And then also having like a little write-up about each place, whether you can park there, whether it's ADA accessible, whether there's a sensitive habitat there, whether you can see wildlife, and things like that. And the second thing I will be working on is the comprehensive plan, which is very exciting. And I'll also be working with the climate action team, doing a little bit similar to what Ellie Hughes has been doing. I met with her briefly today to talk a little bit about that. And so I'll be here for 2 years, which is very exciting. And so if you have any questions for me about the work that I'd like to do or my previous work or about me, let me know.
And all I'll add to that is, she did focus a little bit more about the access to shore, because based on her 2-year plan and the expectation that Island Institute has, that's the first task that she's taken on and spending a good chunk, a little bit more than half of her time working on over the next several months. Well, then she gets herself familiarized with every word in the comprehensive plan, and then really dwelling into community engagement, working with the planning board, figuring out what the planning board wants to bring forth and change, working with the select board, and really making it a comprehensive plan that could be updated, that could be provided through the planning board to the board, from the board to the municipality and the residents, and then could be voted on and updated and improved. And then with the climate action team, they're doing a lot of different things, and so working with them on a smaller scale as they evolve from one project to another, so.
As the co-supervisor, Vika takes care of the job end of things, and my responsibility is really the engagement with living on Shabik, and I'm so pleased to see things are going well, and a big thank you to the community for locating housing. And it's a pleasure to have both of you and your household joining us and being a member of this community. So thank you to the Island Institute for that opportunity.
Anybody have any questions?
From the board?
Not a curiosity, but it's not for, just sometime.
Yeah.
The transition from social work to what you're doing now.
Well, I was gonna say, we can talk about it after this.
Right.
We are gonna have kind of a separate page on the town website for her where she'll keep her work up to date and have to the public. And then after these first few weeks, we will probably send out a text alert with a couple of times during the week that will be open to the public if people who have questions or just want to kind of pick her brain outside of when she's focused on tasks, come in and the public can get to know her and what she's working on and provide their feedbacks and comments and suggestions about how they'd like to see things be incorporated. So there'll be a lot of her.
And in terms of how to get in touch with you, do you use an Island Institute email, is that?
Yeah, so, my Island Institute email is L, and then my last name,
Well, we can put it on, I just wanted.
Yeah, it'll be
Oh,
on the
yeah, yeah.
website, yeah.
Okay.
And she is at the town office Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, so she's full-time with us.
yeah.
She's got 40 hours a week.
9 to 4 is
Yeah.
not 40 hours. Yes, we made sure that we were following what Island Institute told us to do.
Well, we're excited to have you, it's been a while since we've had a fellow, so
Yeah.
it's great. Yeah. Especially a fellow in residence.
And in the town office, that's a first.
Yeah, that is a first.
Yeah, fire department, yes, but town office, to my knowledge, is the first time we've had a fellow physically in the office.
Yeah, and we've learned how helpful that can be. So, great. Does the public have any questions for our new fellow? Or suggestions, or, okay, all right?
Cool, thanks. Thank you.
You don't have to stay if you don't want to.
All right, well, I think we'll move on to the next item, which is 2570, to authorize the town administrator to expend up to $30,000 from the reserve account 920 for piling replacement at the stone wall. And I will just add that even I was confused, and I thought, no, wait a minute, we were spending money for Cousins Island, but that was last time. So I'll just have Vika kind of refresh our memory of what we've already done towards piling replacement and kind of give us a status report on what pilings we have to replace in, the upcoming year or
Yep.
two.
So at town meeting, the select board appropriated $50,000, or the town voted, the voters approved $50,000 to be placed into the reserve account for piling replacement at Chandler's, which was the result from DOT doing the work down there. In addition, they were gonna replace 3 of the town ones that are attached to the town floats. That was planned. What was unplanned was the pilings that now need to be replaced on a far quicker basis at the Stone Pier and at Cousins. At the last select board meeting, you authorized up to $40,000 expenditures for the work on Cousins Island. At that point, I didn't feel comfortable and didn't have enough information to ask for anything for the stone wharf. Since then, we have received, which is attached from the company that's going to be doing the work, the breakdown of the proposal and the work itself. And so at this particular meeting, what I'm asking is a motion for up to $30,000 from that 90/20 account. In total, what that's going to do is allocate $70,000 from that reserve account to replace those particular pilings, and that work can be done in October if the board approves it. What that does is sucks out the money from the account for the work that is taking place at the at Chandler's. I have reached out because this expense, it was not budgeted for. It's an emergency expense. Money needs to come out. It needs to be replaced. With the assistance and the background work of Jeff and the recommendation from Coastal Waters, this is kind of the direction we're moving forward in. I have connected with DOT, and there are expected to have 9 pilings be replaced that are town-owned, so that is an expense up to $50,000 the town will be responsible for. And there's no way around that. That work isn't gonna start until after November, because their requirements about drilling and replacing the pilings is different, and they have to do it after a certain amount of time. The payment most likely isn't gonna be expected until towards the spring, if not creeping into our next budget season. And so, long story short, in total, it's nearly $120,000 in piling work that it's gonna need to be replaced within one budget cycle. There isn't enough money in that account. What I did is I reached out to Chris Mayo from the state and asked what access we have to a SHIP grant, if they have any funds allocated. He did respond within a day, which was wonderful. He did say that all 3 of these projects are great projects for a grant. He is on vacation this week. He did direct me to basically fill out the application for the grant very roughly, without putting a whole lot of information into it, because I had already provided that to him. In the meantime, he's gonna check on what level of funds they have available, and within this fiscal year, if they have the funds or not. So in the next couple of weeks, what I'm hoping is that we can apply for a SHIP grant and we can receive $60,000. So then the town has to match $60,000, which it will, and then some, yep.
So the SHIP grants are 58%. So, and I just wanted to be sure, so even though it's 9 pilings at Chandler's, it's only 50,000, that's the full cost?
It's the full cost based on the quotes that we had received, and it was still assumed that that would be the cost. The reason that it is lower, because of, it does break down to be cheaper than what's happening in the other side of the island, but with
No,
how.
I meant at Chandler's.
At Chandler's, yes,
Yeah, so it's just cheaper because
yes,
of them.
yeah,
Because we're not doing that work.
correct.
We're just paying DOT for our portion of it.
Yes, so the mobilization and all those additional costs aren't incorporated as they are in the other one. So, if we don't get the SHIP grant, then what will likely happen is at town meeting, we will have to appropriate the difference to replace what the cost of the pilings would be at Cousins Island. I'm sorry, at Chandler's. Wicked brain fog,
So Chandler's is the one we have to pay last, so.
Correct.
We're gonna.
Not until
use the
springtime.
money And it's all for filings, but
It's
I guess the Jeff or others wanna add anything to Vika's comments.
And I have intended to email Coastal Waters since the last meeting about all of this, and I have not gotten around to it, so I've communicated with Jeff, but Coastal Waters, I've definitely failed to keep them informed of. But it was recommended by them at the last meeting to have basically similar breakdowns or town meetings. So I'm not
Right.
out of the ballpark with a completely different plan from what had been discussed.
And Herb, do you remember, I think the SHIP grant, it's on a different schedule, it's like, is it their fiscal year or their calendar year? It's like a different thing.
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah, so, did we have submitted a SHIP grant, and there was Coastal Waters filled out a SHIP grant in the past?
No.
Okay. All right.
It's
So
fairly simple.
It is pretty
It's a
simple.
fairly simple application. There's a few areas where it's asking for a detail, and Chris said to not bother. He based what I explained to him was enough information for him to know that we would qualify. It's whether they have the funds to be able to provide that money to us or not.
Great.
Gerhard had his hand first.
And just for my edification, so at the June meeting, town authorized the 50,000 for Chandler's. So it's earmarked for Chandler's. If we use those funds for something else, is there some, do we have to get that, make sure it's paid back by the end of the fiscal year, back in the account? How does that work?
So the reserve account, you as the select board, bring forward a recommendation town meeting. That reserve account has a specific description of what it could be used for. It's really up to your discretion to use it how you want it, as long as it fits within that description. Coastal Waters put a lot of effort into providing a breakdown through last year's budget process, what they were recommending to use those funds for, that they were asking you to put into a reserve. And so with these recommendations, I'm just trying to keep their recommendations in mind as we expend the money and make sure that it's properly replenished, because what that does is it keeps the work that they predicted that should be done on a regular schedule kind of current and having the money there to do that.
So it's basically discretionary. I mean, the vote was to put it in that fund.
Yes.
Not necessarily
Yeah.
specifically
Correct.
to spend it at
Yeah,
Chandler.
so if you wanted to use it, as long as you use it within that description, you can.
And we did spend some time kind of renaming and redescribing a few of those funds so that it was clear what their applications were for. So, I think that one is generically for pilings
And replacement, yeah,
Yeah.
yep. The last 2 years, the reserve account and all the descriptions and the names have gone just entirely into the town warrant, so it was a lot more transparent to the public what they would be used for.
Any more questions from the board about the pilings for the stone pier? Yeah.
I do. On the quote, each of the 3 jobs, it says the mobilization and demobilization is 3,000 each way, even though they're, it seems, I thought at the last meeting we talked about consolidating that, which would be a savings in the mobilization and demobilization.
So this is 2 different jobs, and the third one is combining them.
Right.
And he did tell us in an email that if we do them at the same time versus voting for one and not the other, that he will waive the mobilization.
So that's-
I didn't, what I did is I just asked for a $70,000 between both motions.
Gotcha, okay.
Just for, if we go over by $1,000 from what should have been to what is, it's given me a little cushion, so then I'm not having to come back to you for a motion for $1,000 and delaying that whole process, so.
Second, quick question, if we're replacing the gangway between the ferry and the commercial float, is that present gangway something that could be repurposed?
That's not happening in this
In
project.
this project, okay.
It's just pilings.
Just the time.
Just the pilings, yep, $120,000 of them.
I'm good, thank you.
Any more questions from the board? You hand up there, huh?
I just want to know it says 6 EA, 4 EA, 10 EA. I get that the 6 and 4 added to 10, but EA stands for?
Each.
That's each? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's confusing.
Okay, any questions from the public on 2570, which is the pilings at the stone wall? Okay, so does anybody want to make a motion? It's pretty much in there. David?
I move that we authorize the town administrator to expend up to $30,000 from the reserve account 9020 for piling replacement at the stone.
Second? Gerhard, second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Great. Next item on the agenda is 2571, to review a proposal received from Michael Morris of Archipelago for a shoreline stabilization project on the town-owned 40-foot right-of-way on Waldo Point, and take any necessary action. So I think we can start off with, Vika did some background work on this, and then we can see what questions the board may have.
Yep, so this, what's in your packet came to me, from Mike Morris a few weeks back, and it did not make it to the last agenda, because the agenda was already pretty packed. So, I did let them know it was gonna be on this agenda. Once the agenda was set, what I went to do is, after reading the report, is to determine how much FEMA funding we have, because Waldo Point is one of the locations that was damaged by the storms, and we do have FEMA funds that were allocated towards that project, including mitigation efforts and replacing what was lost. Through that process, what became very evident to me is what the expectations of what FEMA's expecting to be done and what was in this particular report weren't consistent. And so I've reached out to GEI, who is the engineering firm that we've worked with, and asked for them to just look at this proposed report and compare it to the FEMA, because with this particular, project, if I was comfortable bringing forth a recommendation with the motion to proceed, I wanted to make sure I knew where that money was coming from, knowing that FEMA funds were there, that's what it would need to be used for. And so when those questions were raised, I did reach out, and I did receive some information with some additional questions. And so I'm happy to share those with you. I see that there are some, people here relative to this particular agenda item. Basically, what it comes down to is, as you could see, there isn't a suggested motion in here, because there are, I think, more things and information that would be needed for me to feel comfortable to bring forth some kind of motion. Because ultimately, if the board wanted to participate in this, it is one of the town right-of-way accesses that was damaged. There used to be a lot more land there, and there used to be steps down there. And so through the FEMA process, as we're beginning to learn, in order for us not to have to give that money back, it has to stay pretty close within the expected scope of work. And what the proposed scope of work for this is and what the FEMA was, what to me seemed pretty different. And so that led me to ask GEI for some guidance. And they do have some suggestions and recommendations as far as what they would ask for questions before moving forward with it. So that's kind of the background information that I have about this agenda item.
So I think next, so the bottom line is, I think it's a little premature for the town to agree to, to vote or consider participating in this project without some additional information. So I think, but we have an opportunity to ask some questions if people have questions, so go ahead.
Was GEI involved in some design for the FEMA work?
No, so FEMA does everything on their own with their professionals. GI had nothing to do with it, but they have specific requirements. Like one example is within the scope of work, FEMA calculated the cost for replacement of the steps that used to be there. And so we've already received the money from the FEMA. And so for us, we need to make sure that we put those steps back. And so the design needs to be in a way that steps can go there, because if we don't put them there, when the time comes and we have to report that information and it doesn't match, we're gonna have to be writing a check to FEMA. And it's when I saw those differences, that's what really led me to reach out to the professionals, because I don't know enough about this. But ultimately, that didn't provide me any confidence to bring any kind of motion or suggested motion to you, because I think, not to discourage from any work happening, I think on the town level, we need more information to ensure that we don't lose those funds that we have allocated.
There was an engineering design by FEMA, those for.
I wouldn't say engineer and design. There's a lot of calculations that they do, and they determine based on what's there, and then they determine based on their costs, how to replaces and to put back in kind, and then there's some mitigation efforts to improve it. And so right now, in that particular area, if you were to take big, large boulders, for example, and just line the wall, that's not what FEMA is expecting us to do, and so they will be then asking us to give their money back. And so I don't want that to
I'm
happen.
just trying to understand what they were
Yeah.
suggesting.
Yeah, and it's in the FEMA information that Vika provided in the packet, and I think, just to clarify, she reached out to GEI because they have a general services contract with the town to provide engineering advice and, on multiple topics. So that's why she contacted them. So they have had no, part of designing anything related to the project. So, which that might be confusing to people because they have worked on the South Shore Drive, so that's a different kind of situation. So I guess next, I think, if there are any particular questions from the board on Mike's memo or, questions about the project. Yep.
So if the mitigation is riprap, what is there that is going to involve plantings or other ways to stabilize that area?
Well, mitigation isn't necessarily gonna be all riprap. So
So we'll get a more complete plan?
So this is the extent of the preparation that I did for this meeting. I, at this point, need direction from this board as far as, are you interested in participating in this in one way or another? If it's you need more questions answered, or you would like me to provide a more of some kind of aligned, ask the applicants provide them with with the information from FEMA and ask them for something that's more in alignment with that. So the next step is, what do you want to do to move forward? And at that point, I will utilize my time to do whatever the next thing I need to do is.
I guess what I'd like to see is that, so there's discrepancy between whatever FEMA had in mind for this project and the design that's here. I think it'd be important for us to see, what's the disparity there, and then maybe GEI or whatever give us some idea, like how to resolve that in a way. I mean, if it was resolvable, then I think it's worth looking at the proposal, in the town. I mean, obviously there's, cost savings or cost sharing, so, and it was something that was like, we had some money to work with, but we need to figure out how to make whatever FEMA is asking for and what this proposal is, work together before we can really make any decisions about cooperating. So that's what I'd be looking for, is what does FEMA want? We already kind of have their proposal, and then some input maybe from GEI, like how do we make those mesh, make those work? And then we can consider the proposal.
And I think that basically where we are right now is there's just not enough information in the information that was provided, information in the materials that were provided to really have a good sense of that. And I think what might make sense is for us to, follow up and, maybe have a future conversation with, and us might not need to be the board, I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but I think, go one more step here with the applicant and, applicants really, and, see if we can get some of these questions answered, because it was a pretty preliminary presentation of information. So I think that's what I think would make sense for the next step. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure if the question is totally about, can we resolve these differences? I think there's also this whole issue of these public-private partnerships that I do think we need to understand how, this is the second project where this has been proposed. And I think we need to think about how we're gonna work that way, so, and kind of get some guidance maybe on that. So I think, that's sort of what I would suggest, but I don't think we need a specific motion to that, but I think, if the board doesn't have any more questions, I guess I'd give the public a chance to speak or ask questions, so. Yeah. So, yep.
Very good. 4 to 5 feet. Good evening, my name's Mike Morse. I'm here on behalf of Jeff Champagne, who resides at 22 Waldo Point Road, and also the MacArthur family, who owns a residence, or a home at 30 Waldo Point Road. The subject property in question tonight, or that we're discussing tonight, is just this 40-foot strip of land that the town owns in between these two properties. This section of shoreline experienced significant shoreline erosion as a result of, in particularly, the January 2024 storms that were experienced. And it put their homes in a precarious position with respect to the shoreline at this point. And they would like to do something to stabilize their sections of shorelines so that they can protect their homes. As part of this discussion, we're talking with a marine contractor about, what would this design look like, not only for their property, but how do we terminate these? Because we have this 40-foot strip in the middle, and as we discussed it more and more, both the folks here, the abutters on either side, indicated that, if it makes more sense to approach the town and just have a discussion with them to see if you would be willing to do something, if that interests you, they would be willing to kick in a certain amount of money towards that effort. What we provided to the town on August 20th is very preliminary. Carol, you had indicated, and that's intentional. We have not worked out the final designs for their properties yet without knowing what direction the town might want to go with their property. So it would be, this is the first this evening that we've heard about this FEMA funding for this sort of stabilization work or protection of the shoreline around these particular rights of way around the island. And would be very curious to have a conversation with you folks, you or GEI, and just see whether there is any compatibility here between the projects. If there really is not, then that would maybe better inform us whether we're going to just move forward with our own separate projects and permit. We just view this as a good opportunity for the town if you didn't have something already in the works. So,
we appreciate that, and I guess, I think we can consider doing exactly that and sort of seeing if we can have a conversation about the project in general. I do think, it's a little hard to, without some design documents, it's a little hard for us to kind of say yes. Plus, I really want to understand where the select board, this will go through the planning board potentially, and I just want to understand sort of how we need to operate as a town when we're potentially partnering on a project that's going to have independent review. It gets complicated, and like you mentioned in your report or your letter, they're all individual permits, but if it's a combined project, it's just a little complex. And so I just think we need some guidance as a town in terms of how we will approach a project like this as an applicant, potentially. And I guess just a couple questions on that is, what type of permit at the DEP level, what type of permit are you expecting to apply for? A full-blown permit or a PDR or?
That's a very good question. We had anticipated a full or an individual Natural Resources Protection Act permit with DEP. However, they recently revised their rules or amended their rules, particularly the permit by rule, chapter 305, that opens the door now for certain shoreline stabilization projects or tow protection projects in coastal wetland areas or areas adjacent to coastal wetlands. So once we have a better idea of what direction the town might want to go, whether it's to participate in this or not, then we can better work with the affected landowners adjacent to and better develop that plan. And we may see, our objective would be to try to design that project to meet the permit by rule standards, since that's a much simpler and quicker process. If it cannot meet that, because of the type of design that's proposed, then it would be the individual permit.
And have you already done an alternative analysis for this design?
Not for the design in particular. We've evaluated it with a marine contractor, and this is the design that they came up with as being, it's because of the velocity of the wave energy hitting the shoreline, section of shoreline during these bigger storm events. This is the design that he felt would work best there. There are other options, but they would also be structural. Sheet pile didn't seem like a great option. A vertical concrete wall didn't seem like a great option. You start talking with vertical walls or sheet pile, you start talking about deflection of wave energy onto another person's property or the town property, and trying to avoid those sorts of things.
Okay, so I think what we can do on our end is, I think the board can, if the board is in agreement, I think that Vika can work, and maybe myself can work to sort of try to move the ball forward, at least in terms of the discussion. I think we might need some more specific information from you guys so that we can understand what we're responding to, so.
Sure.
And I think it gets dicey with these FEMA projects, as we've discovered, so. I think our objective is to stabilize the right-of-way and, maintain the right-of-way. And I think that's for the larger community. And I think understanding that property owners want to protect their property makes sense, but I don't know if they're compatible as a joint project. So that's what needs to be determined.
Does the town have a good handle yet on what FEMA's expectations are with respect to this type of work? Or
I can, what I could do is I'll send you, or I'll respond to your initial email, and I could send you the document that was generated by FEMA, and that might be enough information for you to be able to see that based on this, yes, this can work, or no, based on what you're doing, this might not be. So maybe that could be the first step, is I can provide that information to you. It's all public information, so it's not like we're starting something here that requires a motion, and then you can follow up and let me know that, maybe this could be compatible, and I can, at that point, bring it back. And
if it
if
appears
not,
based on that there could be some compatibility with projects, would it be appropriate for us to have a conversation with GEI, or would you prefer?
I think we would have a conversation with you with GEI in attendance. That's probably how we would do it. And we would, it is a complex topic, and so I think the town would seek some assistance with that, but at the same time, I think we wouldn't just have the two, entities discussing it without the town.
And one other consideration is, if it works better for the town to move forward, even if it's the identical project, with the FEMA funds and whatever your arrangement is with GEI, to have them work on the design, prepare design.
They're actually not tasked with that at the moment.
Okay.
So that's not part, that's what I was trying to explain. They basically offered some engineering review of this letter for the town administrator to provide some guidance to her. They have no relationship to the actual engineering of the, of the right-of-way project at this point. And so they're not working on it, they're not, so that's, just to be clear, they're really just providing kind of technical.
Yeah, that would, at that point, what that would require is a select board wanting to engage with them on that particular project, and then we would have kind of scope of work, cost estimates, things like that, and then probably similar process how you guys started, just on the municipal side.
So that's why they're not really empowered to kind of carry that ball forward yet, at least at this point, so.
Sure.
Yep.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.
Any
I'll
more-
forward that to you tomorrow then.
All right, I appreciate that.
And any more comments, Donna?
I just have a comment and a couple of questions.
Yep.
First of all, I think this is a great idea. I think, having the people who are doing the work in their property to come to the town and take that initiative, I think it's great. I think it's great that we have some FEMA money, and it just seems like hopefully this will be able to work. And I think that the goal should be something that is safe and something that will stay, and that might even be something where you have a set of stairs that you pull up in the winter before the storms come. I don't know, whatever it is, but I think this is a great opportunity. So I wanted to thank the landowners and the abutters. And the main thing is to have it be safe. I mean, I think that's what we all want, so that, you know, all of us who have gray hair can use those steps. One of my questions is, and I know it's really early after listening to the presentation, but any thoughts about the impact of the project on the midden to the northeast? You know, I just, there is a significant midden there, and I just, you know, wondered if there was any thought about how that might be dealt with. And the other is, on the opposite side, the impact of the town, for many people who don't know, the town actually owns the end of Waldo Point. And so is there going to be any kind of impact to that part of the property as well? So those were kind of my questions, just to have out there.
Great.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming up for those. Yep. So you're hearing about coastal access right away. It's the right meeting.
Ursula King, 34 Cats Road. I have a question as well about Waldo Point. I've been involved in a monitoring project with Mimic. It's the marine invasive, I can't remember exactly what but it's run out of the Wells Estuary. And it's a longitudinal study in all of the Gulf of Maine. And Waldo Point is one of our monitoring spots. And it is considered a critical habitat for certain species. And it is also, you know, there's a lot of information now that hardening shorelines very much changes the environmental impact on the rest of the shore. And as we all know, we have very big tides here. And there's a lot of sensitive things right there on Waldo Point. And I didn't know that I owned the end of Waldo Point, and so that's information to me. But I heard a lot about engineering and saving houses, and I know that's important. I don't own a house on the shore, but I get it. But I also wanted to be sure that we're thinking about the beach. I sent all of you an article about 2 weeks ago and the planning board, and the latest studies say that you can't have a hardened shore and a beach. You have to have one or the other. And that place still has a lot of sand. It changes the habitat extremely if you harden a shore. So I'm not saying I don't think owners should have the right to save their houses, but I want to make sure the town thinks about those environmental impacts. And you know, I'm down there every month from May to October with my 2 compatriots, and so I've gotten to know it pretty well. I think this is my 8th year on that monitoring team, and there have been changes, for sure, but I've also worked, not really in oceans, but in rivers professionally, in bank erosion, and there can be extreme changes when you do hardening mitigation. So just want to make sure it's put out there in terms of that environmental impact, because you can have a staircase there, but there may be nothing left to see. No, I'm not being facetious, I'm just putting it out there because that's the truth. So,
Thank you.
there is ledge there though.
There
Some,
is ledge.
a little bit of ledge.
And so I appreciate that. Any more comments or questions from the public? Anything else from the board?
Well, I would add, yes, I think that's what the evidence says, Ursula, and given the information that we learned yesterday and information available from so many sources, that was what was behind my question when I saw riprap there, looking at what is the green and brown things that can be done to address that concern. And I think the research seems to be pointing in that direction. So we'll look forward to hearing what the next phase is. And thank you very much.
Great, thanks. I think next so thank you for coming, folks.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which I already see is on the agenda, So 2572, okay, to review and approve the proposed changes to the parking and traffic ordinance and determine how these changes will be communicated to the public. And so we have in the packet a red line version of the parking ordinance that, was provided in the packet. And I think first, let's address the comments, changes, and then we can talk about how to deploy it. So I'd rather stick to sort of the specific changes first, and then we can talk about communication. So does anybody have any questions or comments on the version? It's basically dated 9/17/25, and Vika, do you want to add anything? I think it's pretty clear what changes. I think one of the big things is the whole. Why don't you explain why you made these changes? Because I think it's
The
important.
changes that are currently in here are outlined in red only. And the reason behind it is more or less taking the issues that we experienced this summer and putting in some clarified information relative to misuse and abuse that we saw at the Stone Pier about who is an off-island contractor or an employee or a company, and the areas where they can and cannot park. And then also taken into some of the suggestions that were provided from the parking and traffic workshop that we had. And really, the Stone Pier, the off-island contractor employee definition, then there's on page 4, there's some additional information for the Stone Wharf. Some questions were raised around Island Commons and Kids Place and who decides how many. There was never anything in writing, so I did reach out to both of those areas and kind of ask from their perspective how it started, looked up from the town perspective and found kind of a trail of how it came about to the numbers that they were assigned. And so that incorporation is kind of a combination of that. Bennett's Cove, there's been vehicles, typically the same vehicles, parking overnight in front of the no parking sign. So I just kind of gave the parking attendant and myself the authority to find them at an extremely higher rate than what the average $25 no parking area is. It's the same repeat offenders, and so unfortunately, some of these are more or less targeting that, so then we have the authority to fine it, and yeah, that's kind of, those are the two big ones, so.
So I have one question in terms of the passes. So we have 2 assigned for CTC to start with.
Correct.
That are physically assigned. Then we have 2 passes for Kids Place, and then the Commons is asked for 3 passes. So I'm curious why the Commons needs 3 passes and why you're recommending that.
So the Commons I left it at 3 because that's what they currently have, and initially it was 2 and 2, just to kind of be even with CTC gets designated. The point of this is it's not to designate them, but give them the ability to park there over 24 hours if needed, is really the only change from the regular rules that they would apply. And I put it at 3 based on what they currently use and what they have, because one difference is they don't just have 1 or 2 employees that are using it, like with Kids Place. They have in-home nurses that are constantly coming over, and so the need for them to have access to that is greater. And very rarely, I think, are they actually there for more than 24 hours or for 48 or something like that. And so I did also put the exception that if they are going to have a car there more than 48 hours, that they find a way to remove it. So if, you know, if Kids Place is closed for 4 days, there is no need that no reason those vans have to take up those spaces. There are employees and staff, while it might be inconvenient for them, can coordinate that. So kind of giving it a little bit of a balance, giving them still what they've asked for, but then putting a little restrictions on it, just to be fair with how limited that space is.
So I think the bottom line is these changes came out of sort of what Vic is hearing in the office, and also from the parking workshop that we had last month. And so I think, does the board have any questions or suggested changes or comments on the changes that we're proposing? And I will say, this whole thing is sort of a work in progress, and I give Vic a lot of credit because she kind of started it, last year, and I think it's slowly been improving things, and we are trying to respond to the community. So the fortunate thing is we can change this fairly easily. So it doesn't mean this is the last word forever on these proposed changes, but it's kind of in response to some of the things that have arisen. Any comments, any questions on this from the board?
Thank you. I think it continues to need to be tightened up, to be clear. We've heard that from residents who've been looking at violations that are happening, and I want to thank you for being thoughtful in how you're defining these and trying to make it as fair as possible.
I appreciate that. I think there are many who probably don't favor me when it comes to some of these topics, but you can't get any more parking spaces, so you have to balance it out, and it is really through trial and error is the only way that we could do it, and it's not going to be perfect.
And I think, just so I understand, on page 4, 1 sticker per registered voter. So, yeah, okay, no, I don't have a question about that. I was just thinking of my own household and how that worked. But
Yeah, we've had some people that come up and they've had 3 or 4 cars registered and they wanted a sticker for each one, and choose which car you want it on and try to drive that one to the Stone Pier as much as possible, because it makes it more difficult for us to
And I
keep
think,
track.
I think the contractor thing has improved. It's still an issue on, frankly, both sides. And so, I mean, we've tried to provide, or Vic's tried to provide a definition of what we mean by that. And I'm sure there'll be more people trying to, circumvent it. But I think we're trying our best to sort of make it fair. And so that's it. And I guess if the board doesn't have any more questions, then does the public have any questions? And really, Loren, you'd think that all we did was think about parking. It's important. All right, so can I have a motion then on that?
Motion to approve.
Go ahead.
Okay, motion 25-072 to approve the proposed changes to the parking and traffic ordinance and deter.
Yep, that's it.
And that's it.
That's enough.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
Second, David, all in favor? No, I didn't do any discussion, we're good. And I guess then, before we leave this topic, one of the things we definitely heard at the community workshop was communication about parking. And I think, particularly, there were people at, it's interesting, there were people at that workshop who didn't know what the parking requirements are, even though we felt like we had communicated it. So I'm looking for feedback from the board on how, or what your recommendations are for communicating this. I do think posting the revised parking ordinance right on the front page and kind of the stream that who puts up notices would be one place to start. I noticed that it's not on it's not listed with the ordinances, at least I couldn't find it.
It is, it's at the very bottom.
Okay, well, maybe put it at the top.
Put at the top.
And, put revised or something so people know.
Your suggestion, I know, Vika, you said you want to have limited use of the texting from the town, but it might be not a bad thing to text that.
Yeah.
Please see the new parking and the updated parking.
Yeah, that's definitely one that would be helpful, I think. It reaches a lot of people.
And what I would suggest, because today's the, what's today, 17th? We've been trying to put a column in the calendar every month. And we've had several people do it. We've got 2 more select board members who are on deck. And so I'm wondering if somebody would volunteer between now and say the end of the week just to write up something. I do think putting that in the calendar that we reviewed the, we had a public meeting, we took the feedback, we've taken sort of, comments in the office and we've tried to incorporate those into a revised parking ordinance, and really that could be it. But I would like if either David or Richard would, be willing to do that so that we can get it in the calendar. I think it's good that, everybody takes a shot at it. Somebody want to do that? I'm happy to give you a hand. Yeah.
Sure, just, give me some clues.
Yeah, I will, I think between Vika and I, Loren can probably help. I think all we want to do is keep, a communication in the monthly calendar. And I think this is sort of the headline and headline for people because it's definitely on people's mind. So I heard text messages, put it on the website, a text message alert, so to speak. I do wonder if there's a way we can especially, reach the contractors. And I don't know if anybody has.
We have it on the code enforcement officer website.
Right.
In bold and bright, and that is now the only place they have to go to submit a building permit. So if any contractor, and that was a complaint from the contractors, which is why we did that, because one contractor said that it's a waste of his time to go on our website to figure out what the ordinances are and what the rules are. So some are still not gonna listen, but it's right there where they have to go, and that's the only location they can submit a permit. So it's gonna be very difficult for them to argue that they couldn't figure out where it is,
So it seems like it would be good to put revised parking,
Yep.
right on the website and let them know that way. And I think that's sufficient. Yep.
I like the idea of when people get a ticket, that there's a link on there that can take them directly to it. And I know that the tickets are printed up, but could it be a strip of paper? I don't know if we could do a QR code, but some way
We've
so
been
that-
putting pink slips on a lot of cars. If they're parking where they shouldn't,
Yeah.
there's often a warning with a little piece of paper, these are the rules, this is a QR code. The problem that we're really experiencing is it is repeated offenders who know what the rules are, who feel that they should be an exception.
Correct.
And that's
why I like your revision.
99% of the offenders at the Stone Pier now.
Okay.
But okay. Anything else on communication on the parking? Anything from the public on communication on the parking? It's people's number one priority on Shabbat, apparently. Okay, well, good, and I really do appreciate all of Vika's work, and she's the one who hears all the complaints in the office. And there's been a lot, and we've received them as the board, but I know Vika received even more than we do. So it is, a lot of people get pretty wound up about it. All right, so we're gonna move on to 2573 to the town to support, to discuss town support for transportation costs of the collective purchasing agreement relative to its heat pump installations and also, potential weatherization projects. So this is related to the project that the cooperative purchasing initiative that Ellie organized, and talking with her about it, one of the things that she mentioned was to sort of show some town support for the project, if the town could appropriate some funding to support the barging costs for the equipment coming over. And we do have funds in the ETIP. We did receive a grant from ETIP, which we haven't used much of the funds, and so we were thinking of the potential to allocate funds from that. And to be honest, CCAP is meeting Monday, so we're a little out of sequence, so I would really I think we could maybe make a motion at the next meeting. I'm just looking for, because CCAT, I think, needs to sort of make a decision first and make a suggestion on the amount, probably a couple of, $2,000 or something like that. But I wanted to know where the board was at, so CCAT could, make a decision one way or the other.
I guess that's sort of question. I mean, it seems to me if these are all, mostly, if not all, private residences, private projects, and if it's a good number, and the equipment, I assume, comes over, stays over, and then goes back. So I don't really understand why that wouldn't be just handled by the private owners, because they'd be splitting the cost among however many there will be.
Well, I think, well, on one hand, that may be more than one trip. And I think it's really just sort of an endorsement of the collective purchasing project. It is all for private properties, so and if that's fine.
I'm not
Yeah.
category guessing, I just.
It's
wanna
not,
watch 'em
it's not town funding. The ETIP grant was related to energy sort of resilience, and so it seems appropriate to use funds for that. I just wanted to know what the board thought about that.
So it's not town funds.
No, no. Well, not town funds in that it's grant
It's grant funded.
funded to, yeah. Anybody else on that? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to have an idea of approximately how many vehicles and what size. So are we talking about 3 trucks coming over and 3 trucks going back? So
Probably.
not really having an idea about that.
I don't know, so
Okay.
that was what Ellie was tracking down.
Gotcha. And I really like the idea of supporting this work, and really as a way of encouraging more as far as banding together to get group discounts, because we see a lot of individual businesses coming over who could be working together, so I think that sends a good message.
I will add that Ellie did explore a discount with CTC. They had given us a discount for the Team Rubicon to come over for the wildfire mitigation, so they were kind of no more discounts for this year. So I think that's why she turned to sort of, well, can the town use some of this grant funds? And I think it is more just, as Eliza Jane said, to sort of encourage this approach to collective purchasing. And, I think it does benefit everybody, but if people aren't comfortable with it, then I can just let CCAT know. I just was looking for sort of a read before they meet Monday.
Then I would be in support of
Okay.
exploring that, just as a way to encourage that.
And
to happen.
anybody else, neutral, support, or negative? I mean, Earhart, are you?
Well, what else would that grant funding be used for, or would be available to us using? I mean, is there other projects or things we're likely to need to spend that on, or want to spend that on? That would be
It
something to
is, the ETIP grant monies come without a lot of restrictions. I think I'm sort of responding to the climate action team saying we'd like to use it for this application, or Ellie through the climate action team saying that. it's quite likely that it might be used on other things. It could be used like some towns have used this to subsidize this type of a program and actually provide like a partial discount even to the homeowner for the installation of these things. So similar to what the state does on their rebate system. And so one thing that could be done that they've talked about is once the state program terminates at the end of the year, they could potentially, to incentivize people to consider heat pumps and heat pump hot water heaters, they could add a town, some towns have done that, a town rebate. So they could use some money for that.
I guess it just depends on the scale of, you know, it's a relatively nominal amount. I mean, I like the idea of endorsing the project. On the other hand, you know, funds are, I mean, tighter, probably gonna get tighter, so if there's, being that owners are all benefiting and sharing the cost of it, it doesn't jump out at me as a high priority, but I'm not against it per se.
Okay, I'll let CCAT know, and if they decide that they wanna pursue it, there would be a specific amount and an estimated cost of the margin cost. Ellie just didn't have that together yet, so.
May I disclose that we own a home that was looked at for this? It doesn't look like we'll be participating in the program at this time.
But I'm
So
waiting to hear
I won't be
on my house
benefiting.
too.
Oh, you are?
I'm waiting on my house too, and I don't mind paying for my portion of the, whatever.
And I guess I'm also participating, but I wasn't thinking in that terms. But anyway, okay, disclosure.
Thank you.
Moving on to 2574. This was on the agenda last time, and we had the wrong version on, in the packet. So this is, again, and the only change I think I mentioned to you in the email is, it's really a select board communication policy, so it's to review and approve the select board communication policy. I think we all agree we probably need a more comprehensive communication policy in general. But one of the reasons we wanted to make these changes is also that it specifies where we have to post all the meeting notices, and it would be nice for Chris and Vika if we could cut those down to what they've recommended in here, so. So, does anybody have any questions about this, or any,
Krista and I, she did a lot of it, and then I went through it, and so I hope this time around every single change is incorporated, because it took two of us to make it so there wasn't a wrong version at this meeting.
And I think one of the things we may want to revisit as an overall communication policy is sort of, the whole bit about hybrid meetings and can people attend, because I think that's one thing. We've been sort of using the select board as the guidance for that, and I think we need sort of a townwide one, but that's not that's not for this at the moment. So I'm really looking for questions, comments on the revised select board communication policy statement.
I'm good with it.
And it basically, it does say that, email is our primary means of communicating, and text messaging is really not for town business. If you're gonna be late for a meeting, or you're gonna have a question, that's fine, but, I don't think that's been a big problem. So. Any questions or comments or motions or?
I'd like to move to approve the select board communication policy as drafted September, well, I guess it's our date, September 17th, 2025.
Do you have a second? Second, Eric. Any discussion further on this, since there wasn't any to begin with? All in favor? Okay.
Oh, we need public discussion.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Any comments from the public? All right, and that's a policy, not an ordinance, just to be clear. Okay. 2575 to authorize the town administrator to sign the CMP proposal poll application for a pole on Jenks Road. And we included the poll application in our packet, and this is sort of just a formality that we have to approve it, I believe, correct?
Yes, it's just the new build code enforcement officer looks at it, verifies it, gives his blessings, but then because it's technically put in CMP property on town property, they need a motion from the board to see that you authorized it.
It's just a new pole.
Yep,
Only one.
You know,
we've had a few of them this year, though.
Yeah. So any questions on this, on this, poll application?
I think they should spell the name of the town correctly.
Yeah, we were gonna let them know if it was approved.
Okay, it's not a different town.
Yeah, no confusion
Doesn't
there.
have a.
No, just Shebig spelled wrong.
Can we go right to can I make a motion?
Yes, you can.
Okay, it's a big one. To authorize the town administrator to sign the CMP proposal poll application for a poll on Jenks Road, 25-75.
Any second from David, all in favor?
I'm not going to, want to discuss it.
All right, and sorry, we should have moved this other item up, guys, that's my fault. So, 2576, to discuss GEI's proposed changes to the parking design on North Road near the Hook. And so, we're gonna run the board on this thing, on the parking, and, I think, Vika, if you wanna summarize where I think we got a memo or an email from GEI.
Yeah, so, I mean, the board had this in front of you several weeks ago based on years of discussions with residents, and there was a question raised by one of the abutters about safety and where parking spots were. That was looked into by GEI, and ultimately that raised questions is based on the project that they were asked to just simply take and then put in a GEI rendering and put a stamp on it. Scope of work is now slightly changing, and it does appear that the right thing to do is to be within those perimeters, is to move the two parking spaces on the other side of the telephone pole. And so the question is, if that's something that should be done. They did ask us, and the response that Carol and I provided was that the right thing to do is the right thing to do. So if that's what we should be doing, then that's what we should do. But then some questions were raised, and ultimately it's, for why it's on the agenda tonight is there are some minor changes from the original scope of work that you kind of adopted and moved forward with. And with these changes, we need your consensus for some direction. And so an email was received from GEI, and so I'm just kind of give you a brief summary to give you some context for discussion. And so they can relocate the parking and verify the appropriate standards. Initially, the scope of work was, like I said, just to lay the parking design. And so GEI is looking for direction as far as should they proceed and revise the parking layout to meet the site distances. Because if you recall, they were in the process of preparing an application to Board of Adjustment Appeals. And that question was raised, and through that, additional digging was done, and then this is now. So with this particular location, every time we're really close to some progress, there seems to be several steps behind. And so the board needs to provide me with some direction to ultimately provide GEI with the direction. Do you want to proceed revising the layout and then preparing the application, or not? And then with their scope of work, I did not include a signed and sealed set of plans, and if this is something, so plans for construction, so they would, revise and provide the application, but then do you want those revised plans to be prepared kind of to go forward for construction if were to be approved. If so, do you want that, something to have them included in, because what they're gonna be doing is they're gonna be meeting, and so they need some of this additional information to know which direction they should take it, and then get back to us and make sure that the application they fill out on the behalf of the town to Board of Adjustment Appeals accurately reflects what the board is looking for.
And I will say, they also received an email from you, from Earhart, concerning the same issue. And so I think they were in a sense responding to the board's question. So I think it's important that, we give them the direction as a whole board. Do we want them to modify the do we want them to modify the parking, which was semi-contiguous, and now they would have to, basically, the basic change is the parking on the north side of the road would have to move further up the road in order to maintain this line of sight. And I think the bottom line is it's safer for visibility for someone coming out of the driveway, and that seems reasonable to us. What the point they were making is, you didn't hire us to design this, you hired us to help you, prepare the application for what we thought was originally the planning board. They discovered, no, it's actually the Board of Appeals. And so, lesson learned here to me is like, hire them to design something instead of we've been on this now for years. And so I think it started off on the back of the napkin, and that can lead to kind of these kind of issues. So anyway, that's where we're at, I guess. So the first question is really, does the board have any questions about this? Where does, is the board comfortable modifying the design?
Well, you blame it on the new guy, because I was here with the original.
The new guy is paying attention.
I happened to show up, and someone asked a good question, which I passed along, and here we are, so.
And I think that question came up in the parking workshop, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
So my question is then, I guess it's whatever they're thinking is not reflected in this, because this is the plan currently, right, that we have going in here, so it's
Yes.
basically taking the parking, the two spots that were, if you're looking at the picture, to the left of the driveway, right, towards the hook, those spots are gonna now move to the other side?
No, see, if you're looking at the drive right now, the parking spots currently on the right side, which are between their driveway and the telephone pole, closer to your house, they would, to be proper, they need to be moved on the other side of the telephone pole, so everything between the actual driveway and the parking lot would be a no parking zone. So we would have to find a way to mark that out somehow, because people are still gonna park there if it's not properly marked.
The question though from the owner was coming out the driveway and making a right, heading towards College Road. That's where they were having problems, because cars were parking, pushing up against their driveway to the point where they couldn't see around the car to see the curve and that leads to Cottage. So the problem was on the Cottage Road side, not on the other side. And I thought when I read the letter that the views looking down North Road, there's plenty of it's pretty much a clear shot. You can see fine, but you can't see fine approaching in the corner.
So
that was my understanding.
my understanding from what they would be designing and based on what they've discovered is that for the driveway and the parking spaces on either side of the driveway have to be a certain amount of distance away to allow. And so the room on the right side, with how large those parking spaces were created initially, had that ability. The room on the left, with how it was designed, didn't. And so the parking spaces on the left would recreate what you had originally had approved.
Okay. So they're basically gonna create better line of sight both sides.
Yes.
It's gonna require completely moving the ones.
Right, so basically they can meet the criteria with the design on the Cottage Road side, but on the, close to your house, they have to go to the other side.
The other side of that pole.
And I do think, the goal here was to replace the parking as best we could that was down on the beach, and so we're moving it up. I think we heard a lot about the parking there at the workshop, and I think we recognize that it's gonna require enforcement, and people are still gonna park inappropriately.
And I did receive a communication from, some of the residents who live down that house between where the parking spaces, kind of understanding that there's the discussion of plans potentially be changing, and what does that do? And it's with whatever the plans are going to be or are approved, the process is still relatively exactly the same in terms of how the community and the abutters are notified. So the notices are gonna be still the same. So the abutters within a certain amount of distance will be notified through mail. We'll have to post it in the newspaper twice. It would go to Board of Adjustment Appeals, that will be advertised. So that process does not change regardless of how the current, plans change.
So this is not the process to get public input about the design, that would be the Board of Appeals.
Correct. This is you as a board, do you want to
Instruct
proceed
GI.
and instruct GI to move forward to making it based on what the requirements are and kind of take it on as a project and present it to us as a project, from them, and provide that for Board of Adjustment Appeals, the application with all of that information.
And I will add that I did speak with him briefly today, and the Jenks Road project is slightly different, and frankly, backing in or pulling in is not optimal parking design, but given the situation, it's what we decided. They believe that's reasonable, it's not a particularly busy road, this road is different, there's a lot of traffic at state. So they are very comfortable, they said, with the design as is on Jenks Road, and not necessarily applying the same criteria, but they feel that your comment and the concern about the line of sight makes sense on North Road. So what's the consensus of the board? And I think embedded in that question is that there's a little additional cost. I don't think it's significant, but I think it's our job to provide safe parking. So everybody okay with that? Dave? Okay. So, yep.
The only thing I would, which you already mentioned, Vika, is making sure we don't have parking creep. Because with those parking spots behind the telephone pole, making sure additional parking will happen further up the road. So having signage or however we need to design that to make sure that people aren't parking there.
Maybe
important.
Crocs.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking about a big rock, like by the driveway, not high enough to block a view, but high enough to stop a car.
I think those are all kind of
something.
detail-oriented, things that will, where's the sign gonna go across the street, at how far up the hill, or so to ensure that it's all proper and.
I think instead of signs that say no parking here, the notion of rocks or additional pilings to prevent it that are consistent with this design would.
Yeah, some nice big compliant granite blocks would be lovely.
Not a bad idea.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll move on to the public. Anybody here have any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Well, I didn't know this was gonna be on the agenda, I just happened to be here. So I decided I would come. Couple of comments. One is, I think it's really instructive that getting the engineering drawings was really a good idea. And so that I think the lesson learned is some of that seat of the pants stuff was a mistake. And I would also, just while we're on the subject, give the town office credit for paying attention to the enforcement issues this summer. I know that they were doing that, and they were doing it. And, the problem's not gonna go away, but credit where credit is due. I've been involved in all the discussions from day one on this. I think what you've described, if I understand it, which is to rethink the sort of scope and put part of the solution on the other side of the telephone pole is a game changer. I think that's because that was not part of the conversation 2 years ago. And I think this opens up a solution that solves the sight lines. Because I think there is room between the driveway and the gate for two, and sight lines and bicycles. If the others are on the other side of the telephone pole, so I think you potentially. I would also ask, can you just, so that I can help to communicate, what is your expectation about when are you going to have consultation with people who are affected and where?
So I think the process of consultation, the next step is if the board says, yes, go ahead, GEI will modify the design, so give that to the town, and the town will apply to the Board of Appeals for their review and hopefully approval. That would be when the entire community receives notice about this. And I mean, it would be posted as a Board of Appeals meeting, there's a process for the abutters to be notified, as Fika said, there's a notice in the paper that's required, so there's a lot of notifications that come with the Board of Appeal review.
But that wouldn't be a workshop, you'd be seeking approval of your design.
Yeah, I don't know that, I guess I wasn't envisioning a workshop with, I was not involved in the original parking design process, I think Tom mostly took that on, but I wasn't thinking at this stage of the game of having a workshop, because it becomes endless, frankly. I think we are doing the best we can to provide additional parking at the top of the hill for the public, and, in a way that's safe for everybody. We responded to a particular complaint but I mean, and we had a board member who also had a concern, so I think we're kind of where we think we can be. I don't know what the objective of a workshop would be.
I personally am very hopeful that there's a win-win here. That's gonna take some consultation so that everybody can be on board. And I would encourage you to lean into the consultation.
Okay.
The more that you can communicate.
Can I make a suggestion? And I was involved in the early stages of this process. With the involvement that I've had in the process, I think for this particular location, a lot of time and effort and consultation, more so than, like, using Jenks Road as an example, the amount of meetings that took place to get to where the Hook Road potential parking is now versus how many meetings took place to get to where the Jenks proposal parking, a lot of consultation has taken place. And I think that the current proposed plan, no changes to it have been made from what was originally proposed, from including the immediate kind of stakeholders, you being the representative for that. I think at this point, the changes are in line with the ordinances and the requirements to meet the proper process and procedure, so it could be approved on the Board of Appeals level. Initially, it was just going to be adopted by the Select Board. The reason that it's going through this process is we've really tried making sure that on the municipal level that every process is followed diligently if it's going to be expected from the public. And I think it's through that process that we've learned we have to take all of these steps. And so the next logical way to make it move forward is have the Board of Adjustment Appeals, and that's the opportunity for the public and all of the abutters impacted to come to that meeting and weigh in. There will be opportunities for those abutters to have ability to say something, whether they support or not support the project. And then Board of Adjustment Appeals is the body that makes the decision of whether it goes through or it doesn't. If they choose it goes through, then it can go to construction. If they choose it doesn't, then that's the end of the discussion as it exists for that particular location.
Well, thank you for the clarification. My suggestion to the select board is this is the place where communication will happen.
Yeah,
My question, Ted, is there, are you aware of, so a particular individual came and let us know they had this concern, a very legitimate concern, which we've now, we're in the process of addressing. But are you aware of other concerns, you know, comparable? I mean, the particular individual came forward and said, well, they weren't aware of this and that and the other thing, they felt like they were out of the loop. Not sure why, we've had a lot of meetings about that, but are there specific concerns, or is it more that you feel some individuals, affected individuals or interested individuals are feeling not communicated with? And is there something other than some formal meeting that we can address that with? Because I really value communication, I understand that, and I heard from this one individual who brought this concern that was legitimate. She felt like she was out of the loop. And so I'm not sure why that was, because our understanding as a board was that any time and everybody was talking with each other and had representatives. But if you're aware of anyone who has concerns, I think the best thing is to let them know, come to us, come talk to us like this individual did.
Well, I don't know who that individual is, so I can't, if I did know, I probably could give a better understanding,
Yeah,
better
well,
explanation of what that was about. I think that, look, I didn't know that you guys had anything from DEI when I arrived on the HB today. Nobody told me there was anything going on.
it's been on the select board agenda on prior meetings, and I think, just to understand, we sort of transitioned from a select board project, which it was when, you know, Bob was involved, and the select board, you know, we were weeks from actually constructing the thing with a contractor that we had hired or talked to. And our code enforcement officer alerted us to the fact that, you know, actually you need to go through the planning board, was what we were told. So then that was still sort of, you know, the same process, but we were then going to have to go to the planning board. Then we realized, you know, then we felt it was best, I think the board decided to engage an engineering firm to, you know, develop the application and some plans, because it was pretty sketchy what we had at that point. And so then the next thing we find out is from actually the engineering firm is that the actual, you know, avenue to go for approval is through the Board of Appeals. And so that's kind of how it's going. And so we're not, even with the planning board, we're not the review board anymore. I mean, it's not gonna be up to us. And so the public process, they can weigh in at the Board of Appeals hearing. But, I mean, I don't think that the town, you know, I think we've spent a fair amount of resources on this. I think we've tried to do the right thing. We are trying to replace the parking. If people have, you know, specific suggestions, they can make them at the Board of Appeals meeting. I think that makes sense, but I worry that this project will never get constructed if we don't move forward.
I mean, I think if your intention is to have them do a design, I want to be crystal clear. I think you've got a big improvement in what you're talking about in terms of the actual solution. Because a lot of the concern is it's too tight as it was envisioned.
Exactly.
And that was the source of a lot of the angst, was this won't really work.
Right.
And, you know, if we can solve that problem, I think there's potentially, you know, and I'm gonna try to help. And if you notify me when the thing's gonna be, I will be here if I possibly can. And I will try to let other people know.
Make sure you know.
Well, we appreciate it, and we certainly, once they have their final drawing, we're happy to send that on to you. I think, I think though, I don't think the board, I mean, I think in response to kind of what Vika said, I think the board is ready to bring this project forward. And unless you have serious objections that we need to know about now, that's kind of what we would like to do. And we'll be happy to communicate. I mean, we literally thought we were there a couple weeks ago, and then this issue came up, so. And
It was supposed to be, we had a date for construction. I mean, that's how close we were. It was, the construction was gonna start the following week, and it was gonna be completed for Memorial Day weekend. And so with the plans that we had originally had, with all the work that we did with the residents, based on that original design, we were gonna do the work until the code enforcement officer, who happened to have a conversation, alerted us of the process. And then it's through that process, I didn't feel comfortable filling out an application to the planning board on the behalf of the town. We sought the professional help and kind of let them design based on the original scope of work, what can fit. And now,
I think that, you know, I think that, lesson learned for us as the town is, next time start out with the engineering firm initially. It's hard for them, they're in a difficult position, I'm sure Phyllis can appreciate this. They've been given a project they didn't envision or design and been asked to kind of do it, and they, you know, they weren't being asked to design it specifically, and so that's kind of how we got into this. And I don't think it's a good approach, and so I think on the other project with James Road, they were there from the beginning, and it's been easier for them to kind of, you know, prepare the application for that project, because they started off with us on that, so that's, you know, something the town, in retrospect, we would have been a lot further along had we started that. But I hope that, I mean, I think it's a good project, I think it's gonna solve some parking, I think it's gonna, this movement of the parking up a bit is gonna create a tendency for people to wanna park there, and we're gonna have to find a way to prevent that.
Yeah.
And that we would certainly consult with the neighborhood about.
Thank you.
And may I just add, so I backed into the driveway to look at the line of sight after the conversation. And in fact, I don't know if you have a copy like we do with the red dotted lines, which really
It was in the packet.
explains. So here, let me give you my copy, because if you looked at coming out of the driveway, the line of sight shows traffic coming from this direction.
Yeah.
And that does give adequate line of sight. It is not present in this direction. So by moving these spots to the other side of the phone pole, it's gonna make it safer, because it will give better line of sight. There won't be any chance of obstruction here. Because we're gonna prevent the cars from parking there.
No, I'm not gonna take you back.
Oh,
I
Well, you
just-
can, it's in,
No,
it's in
please
the
do.
select
I
board
can
packet.
get one from you.
Oh, I was sorry.
I would just make,
No, I see the
further
process.
comment that I think this is a perfect example of the value of the engineering, because showing the sight lines is so helpful.
That's it, right, makes it clear.
So,
Thank you.
thank you, Earhart, for
Good thing.
moving the needle on that, and but I mean, I think we're close, and, you know, the thing will be for them to, and the goal is to take both parking plans to the Board of Appeals and have them, but we are trying to operate just as any applicant would and do it properly, and so that's part of the goal here. So we've learned a few things in the process.
Can I
Yep.
just make a couple comments? I haven't been involved in this at all. It's not an Indian Island company or association matter. It's really between the adjacent property owners. I appreciate the support we've had this year for the parking issues that have, especially in front of the chain, where things can get blocked off, especially for emergency access and whatever. But I can't emphasize enough how important enforcement is gonna be. Because people blow up the signs, they don't care what, we've had it marked before, we had 5 places there years ago. They come around the curve where the Clarks live, put it right in front of the fenced area. It is, I mean, it really has to be closely watched and enforced.
And so we have beefed up our parking enforcement. I think it's improved from past years, but I think that's gonna be something we will probably have to bring to the voters, is, you know, and it would be really helpful for if people from the neighborhood support maybe additional parking enforcement expenditure and staffing, and I think it's really, the other thing is, we did have a recommendation from somebody, and I've experienced it, I'm sure you guys have been, these rubberized, you know, bumps that you can put on the road to really slow down the
Yeah.
traffic, and you're using them in Falmouth.
We see
and-
them in Falmouth, yes.
Right,
all the
and so
time.
that was recommended as an option for maybe the top part of the road there, where people
Yeah.
come around the corner. And so I think that's the kind of thing we could have a discussion with the, your neighborhood about, just as we are with some of the other areas. So we understand the need and the importance of parking enforcement, and I would say, I would give a lot of credit to Vika for really
Yes.
helping ramp that up. And I think we need more, and it's challenging out here to even get somebody to do it. So we did have the sheriff also cooperate this year, and I was there on the 4th of July when he put a ticket on a car while we were down watching the fireworks. And so he was, on the floor. So anyway, I think you're right about the enforcement. I think there might be some creative things we can do to help prevent people from parking places, and we'll look to you for some guidance on that.
Okay, great, thank you. David?
Just one quick comment, I would maybe disagree a little bit with Phyllis, but I think Indian Island should have a role in this. It's the main entrance now to a major conservation project on the island. So it's the whole experience, both people that are familiar with it and new people that are learning. The parking, the arrival, the sign, it's more than an engineering project, no offense, but it's welcoming, it's information. We have a sign now that's there next to the gate that, I mean, if that's on town right away, then maybe we need some sort of coordination of the exact location of that. It's on a wooden stand, it could be moved. Where's the bike rack relative to the parking? Well, that whole entry sequence, this should be considered, and let's not miss an opportunity.
Right, and I think we're open to adjustments if that's what you want to do, but I don't think this project's gonna impact that directly, but if you want to make changes, I think we can.
What I foresee is once the project is hopefully approved and constructed, is reach back out to the point of contact of, with the new construction, the bike rack signage, things like that, because those are all the conversation that took place initially when the temporary, not approved, non-design plan happened. There's absolutely no reason why those conversations still shouldn't happen once the proper and legal parking spaces are in place. So I don't see that going away by any means.
And we do have a problem, which I assume you are aware of, where we literally put up a sign and it's gone in 24 hours.
Oh, we are,
Yeah,
we're living it.
Yeah, so it's an issue, and, that's a problem. And I will say it's not the only part of town where we have the residents really upset and concerned about parking. So we're doing the best we can. I think it's improving, and we would like your support when it comes to maybe, trying to make some more improvements. So we appreciate you coming, and I'm sorry to leave you guys to the end of the meeting. It didn't occur to me that's why, I just didn't think about it, so sorry. Because I hate having to sit through the whole meeting for the 5 minutes of stuff. So I think that brings us close to the end of the agenda. So I guess before we leave this, so we don't really need a motion, but I think we need to give the clear direction officially on what to do with this parking plan, these adjustments.
So can we, if we were to add posts, I like the idea of the posts with the rope to contain the parking. If we were to put posts in the spot where those parking are being moved from, does that need to be in the plan, or can we just do it?
I think right now, the direction the GI needs is, do you want us to continue?
Oh, okay.
So, and
That's all they need.
if there is a change in cost difference, then at that point, I'll ask them for kind of the proposal or whatever that is, and then bring that to you for a more formal approval.
Okay.
At this point, I personally don't see you needing to come up with a solution of how you're going to ensure that there's no parking taking place in that particular location that once used to be a parking.
Okay, so I hope you'll convey to the people that that's a concern that we're all going to share.
Yeah, because it would help us too. if we kind of can find a way to minimize that problem. So, all right, so I think that brings us, so I think we are, do I understand that we're gonna say yes to, because, to GEI sort of coming up with this alternative final version, it's gotta be final, guys, and bring it forward to the Board of Appeals. Okay, great, and thank you, Earhart, for kind of being proactive on that. That's why it's good to have new people, of course. Other business. Tika, did you have anything on other business?
I do. I am hoping that I can get a motion from you to appoint somebody else as a local health officer. We have a woman, I don't know who she is, but she does have connections to Shebig. Her husband's family has been coming here, a woman named Danielle Bowen. She is a resident of Maine, which is, there are certain requirements, which we had one very nice woman who was interested, who unfortunately was not a resident of Maine. So this woman, Danielle Bowen, is a resident of Maine. She is a nurse practitioner. She works at Mercy Hospital. She is somebody that comes to the island seasonally, so she's very familiar with the island world, and is interested in really taking on this very small task, which is appealing to her because it gives her an opportunity to be involved with the community and participate. And I had a couple of references. She, based on the references, was very smart, caring, quick to respond. And so I don't have a good reason not to make a recommendation to appoint her as a local health officer. She would be required to do a training on her own time within the next 6 months. So that's really the big requirement that if you were to appoint her, that we would need to follow up with to make sure happens. But other than that, it is a very small position, relatively speaking, in the municipality. It is a stipend position at $2,000 for the year, so it's a quarterly payment. And her really primary role is to communicate anything from the state of Maine relative to, the general public's health. Most of the time, it's just really notices of, the season is coming upon us, the tick season is gonna be bad this year, things that then we generate and put on the town website. So that's really a lot of it. If you're okay with it, I would appreciate a motion to appoint Danielle Bowen as a local health officer, and this will go through the end of this fiscal year. And if things work out, then she will hopefully be appointed again for next fiscal year, so.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Do you wanna make a number with that, like 77 or?
Just a motion to appoint Danielle Bowen as a local health officer.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve Daniel Vaughn to be our local health officer.
Second? Eliza? All in favor?
Can I just
Oh,
say,
sorry, discussion.
I would like to be able to, do the notices just go to you as the town administrator when she has?
Yes, it's,
notices?
I mean, with the other local health officer, I probably got a handful of them in the last couple of years, so this isn't a
And
lot
is that
of.
how often they come out,
Yeah.
do you know?
It's not, it's
very
not a bit, I mean, unless we hit COVID again or another major catastrophe, very rarely are we gonna hear, and it's very generic most of the time, the flu season is upon us, make sure you get your shots.
So
And
during COVID, we never heard from our health officer, as a public member and a member of CART. So just knowing that if we have another situation of that magnitude, that would be helpful.
yeah,
That's all.
a lot of the times they're just brief PDFs and then we put them under news and announcements.
Okay,
So.
thank you. That's all my discussion.
Yeah, no, that's fine, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped the gun there. So, any more discussion? If not, all in favor? Great. Yep, okay. So anybody else with other business? Okay, moving on to communications. Anybody have, I do have a communication that probably a lot of people are already aware, but GP Cog fellow Ellie has been offered a job with the legislature in Augusta starting before the end of this month. She'll be gone, I think she'll be here next week.
Next week,
And
correct.
that's her last week. It came up pretty suddenly. She was not expecting that if she was offered the job, that she would have to leave so soon, because the legislature isn't in session till, late into this year. So she was, concerned about that, and, I think it's a great opportunity for her. We encouraged her to do it, but she will be leaving quickly. She will, coordinate with Loren on some of the work that she's working on. I think the main thing would be sort of the E-tip work. And fortunately, being with the Island Institute, that's good, because I think they're, that's the group that's delivering the E-tip program. Anyway, I think we're gonna miss her, but I think it's a good opportunity, but I wanted to be sure everybody knew that. And, so, she's excited. And then the other thing is, it's not know if it's communication, but a couple of us went out to, 3 of us were, in this group, were out on Great Little Diamond Island yesterday to see a project that the community had done, and a really talented architect had done what we would call a nature-based solution shoreline stabilization project, somewhat different than what was sort of being described here tonight. And so it was really interesting. It was also interesting to, a lot of the other islands were there, and that was good. And the other things that came up were tick problems, deer problems everywhere, and maybe we should get together and kind of petition the state to deal with, getting rid of some of these deer. And then also I had a conversation with Mark Green from Long Island, who's not a municipal officer, but there's been a lot of interest in maybe trying to have a workshop with Long Island to sort of see what things we could share. We did this once several years ago, but I think there's been more interest and momentum in trying to share some things, including, things like code enforcement or other things, and even just share the burden, if nothing, psychologically, because I think it was interesting being at this meeting and watching this great community project and sort of being completely envious of the 25 people that they had, 30 people, kids, all helping with this project. But it did sort of dawn on, I think, most of us from Shabig and Long, is that we're in a very different circumstance. We're running a town and trying to do those kind of things. And so I think, sort of, we have a lot of shared concerns that we could benefit. And we are going to be coordinating on this wildfire plan, so it seems like a good time to kind of build that relationship. And some of the people that I've known for a long time are, getting pretty long in the teeth, and so I think trying to build it for really the next generation is even more important. So.
And Long Island is down to 3 EMTs for coverage 24/7, and that's pretty slim. And we've had rescue calls head over to provide services to Long Island and in cooperation. So I think on that front, it's a good way to move forward with supporting our neighbor.
Yeah. So anyway, I just think that's something that we may that came up sort of just in conversation. But I thought it was a good program, and it was also nice to see sort of something that I hadn't seen before, so it was good. Anything else on communications, any emails or communications that you received from people in the public or other places that anything you can think of?
One of the things that I've been trying to tackle, which is finally done, is the, Owen Haskell, the surveyors, finally put the markers down at Bennett's Cove, including the turnaround area, and updated the survey to reflect that. So now that we have that information, and it clearly states on a survey that it's town ownership property, GI has been forwarded that information, and they will move forward with some form of proposal to us for the culvert replacement. So that's one of the communications I've had. The other is we've received, and this is once again, sometimes they come from the architect, sometimes they come from nobody addressed for a return, but we received a public notice of intent to file for 12 Morton Beach Road. Ruth and Ralph Reagan. And it is an intent to file an a PBR permit application through DEP for a proposed installation of riprap across the shoreline for 12 Molten Beach Road shore stabilization. So this will be for DEP review. And so this is another of those which it's at the DP level, the notifications are really inconsistent as far as how the municipality is notified, whether residents are notified. And so tomorrow, when Lorena and I sit down for our weekly check-in, this is going to be one of the topics that I discuss of having us come up, and we briefly talked about, and I've talked to the bookkeeper about, is come up with maybe some kind of an Excel document or something where somebody on the regular basis is checking the state site to see what's come into them and whether what we've received for a notice is up there or not, because I think there are a lot of projects that are happening on the state level that are going to the state first that the town's not aware of, and considering a lot of them are gonna make their way to the planning board approval and so forth, it just better planning, better understanding of what's happening on town property, in the municipality on private properties.
Well, some of these though, and it happened recently, some of them have a comment period with the town. And it takes a bit for we did do this once, the town can supply comments, but it's a time frame. And if we don't know that that time clock is ticking, and it happened on a project where by the time we found out about it, that had already passed. And so I think we actually had a conversation, the commissioner was there for DEP, which sort of surprised me. And so I talked with her about this sort of communication notification problem, because it's pretty severe, and then apparently Paul followed up with another conversation with her, so she heard it twice, but it's been a real issue. We can't seem to get a response out of the department staff, so I think we don't really have a good handle on what projects are being proposed, what stage they're in, and in a normal town, it would go to the planner, and the town planner would be on top of these things, but we don't have that person, and Paul doesn't really have the time. So with Lorraine, maybe we can get a little bit better process.
Yeah, we have, with her intern, there are specific things through Island Institute that she should be working on, but little small projects that are relatable to kind of what her overall goal and purpose to be here. This definitely is one of them to help us get organized and make sure that we're on top of it, so. And then the only other communication that I have is I have been in contact with the county manager relative to assessing services. They do have some assessing services that they provide to a handful of municipalities. That's through the county, which is similar to what we do for the sheriff. Just because we know that our current assessor is on a limited time with us, and so in the next year, we are gonna need a new assessor, and so I am trying to see if maybe going directly through the county is a better way for us, and so I have been kind of back and forth, providing them some information, and communicating about that. So if something, comes through that seems something worth looking into more further, I'll definitely bring that in front of you.
So, anything else under communication? So I think the last thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes that were sent for September 3rd, 2025, and they're in the packet here. And so, if anybody wants to make a motion on those minutes,
Make a motion to approve the minutes of September 3, 2025.
thank you. Second, somebody? David? All right, any discussion on the minutes, any corrections of the minutes from our last meeting? Okay. All in favor? All right. And then, given the time, I think if just reach out to me. I know Eliza Jane has something she wants on the next agenda, but if there are things people want on a future agenda, and I think after our retreat tomorrow, you know, there may be some things that are sort of bigger issues that we want to follow through, and then some very specific limited issues, and, so let us know, and, you know, if it works for people, we can also just put up a sheet on the Google Drive and do it that, you know, on the town drive, and people can throw them up there when they think of them. So that's another way, to do it. And then David, just before we leave, did you guys schedule a meeting with,
We're trying to.
Yeah, I sent out a Google poll with 15 different suggested dates, and so I'm still,
But there's no one contact person in that neighborhood?
No.
Not like.
I've reached out to Richard and asked him for how they communicated, and so I got a list of every person, and so
Okay.
however, so, yeah.
We all signed.
All right. So everybody will see you Friday morning, we'll go over an 8 o'clock vote, and, yeah, and it's a time to sort of focus on goals and, sort of priorities too. And I thought it was really, what I said, I was a skeptic, but I thought it was really worthwhile last year. And so I think it will be good, and Vika, I hope you've added things that you think, from your perspective, we should cover.
And Dave and I are going to Route 1 parking lot, and then going, so we won't be there right
You
away.
wanna just go with us?
I can give you a ride.
Yeah, you don't need to do that.
We can figure that out on Friday on the
You have
boat.
to go somewhere else.
As long as you can drop me off at my car at Route 1 when we're done.
Yeah.
Because I'm not coming back to the
Yeah,
car.
that's fine. Okay. But I mean, it's up to you guys, but if you wanna.
Okay, let's ride with other people.
Sure.
Motion to adjourn?
We all together.
Yeah,
I'll
motion
get,
to
I'll
adjourn.
get, whichever
adjourn.
way you wanna get in.
Gerhard,
Good.
Liza. All in favor?
Good.